In today's video, is a high carbohydrate diet okay to get you shredded? Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com. In today's video, we're going to discuss the topic of carbohydrates and getting shredded, getting lean, getting ripped. Seems very much in the kind of position right now of the fitness world that carbohydrates are bad, insulin is bad, and I want to have this discussion around why this is happening. And today's question actually comes from right here on my Instagram direct message. So if you'd like to send me a question, go ahead and do so and we can discuss it. Now today's topic is a high carb diet okay? I want to get shredded by either the end of August or the end of September. I'm 5'4", 137 pounds, eating 1,600 calories a day with minimal cardio. Thanks, Paul. Now, to get an overall understanding of how I like to do things, I've given you guys some free tools. So if you go to ProPhysique.com, there is a calorie calculator. Literally, you can just plug in your height, weight, age, activity level. It's gonna tell you how many calories to take in. And if you need a program and a nutrition plan to follow just to get started, I have a free beginner's guide on ProPhysique.com as well under the programs tab, which I'll link below. But today's video, I actually want to discuss the science behind weight loss, the actual use of carbohydrates in weight loss. Because lately, I've just been getting overwhelmed with messages. And even in the comment section of this video, people will jump in and say, if you eat carbohydrates, it spikes your insulin. If it spikes your insulin, it prevents fat loss and promotes body fat storage. And I want to go ahead and kind of just dispel that rumor. Because one of the first things you learn in exercise physiology is that our bodies are always both burning body fat and storing body fat. So that's not what we need to worry about. What we need to worry about is the net energy balance throughout the day. So when it comes to dieting for fat loss, you need to make sure that you're in a caloric deficit. You can diet on just carbohydrates. You can diet on very low fat. In fact, I want to show you some studies where they did a few interesting things. Now, the important thing about these studies that I'm going to mention is they were done in a metabolic ward setting. That means a person has to check in to basically a hotel, and everything they do is tracked so that it's not just you're trusting someone's thoughts on what they recall they ate, what they think they ate, what they weighed. No, these people were given a diet and they were tested throughout the process to find out. And this study was done in 2016 by Hall et al. And they actually took two groups and gave them the exact same amount of calories. The difference being, one group was put on a very low carbohydrate diet, one group was put on a very low fat diet. The interesting thing there was that the group that was put on a diet of 6% carbohydrates versus a group that was put on a diet of 48% carbohydrates, but given the same protein and the same calories, got this same results. Okay? So I hear what you're saying, Paul. Well, okay, so maybe carbohydrates aren't bad, but if they get the same results, why would you want to consume carbohydrates if you could have more fats? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. The next study I want to talk about was also done by Hall. And here they took obese men, 19 of them, and they put them on a diet of 2,740 calories for 5 days. They then, after that, set their baseline, and then they set their diet at 1,918 calories for 6 days, again in a metabolic ward setting for a deficit of around 822 calories per day. Now the difference here is that one group got their fat very high, one group got their carbohydrates very high, but both groups kept their protein exactly the same. So what was interesting was that the group that was a high fat group, their fat oxidation increased exponentially early on, which you could understand because they were ingesting more total fat. But this soon ceased. They hit a plateau. The carbohydrate group, when their carbohydrates went up, their carbohydrate oxidation went up, but it never stopped, actually leading to a greater fat loss. So this could indicate that by taking in a higher carbohydrate-based diet, if protein and calories are equal, you could lose more body fat. They also noticed in the reduced carbohydrate group that the protein oxidation increased, and they postulated that this could perhaps lead to skeletal muscle loss. So what does this all mean for us when it comes to dieting down, getting lean, and keeping muscle? In my mind, I don't think that we should demonize any one group. okay? I think we should focus on a balanced approach. My personal favorite approach to getting people shredded is to keep carbohydrates in the diet and actually keep them in the diet as high as possible while also keeping our fat and our protein in a range that is going to promote our health, our well-being, our performance, and our recovery. I also will include high carbohydrate refeed days and diet breaks. Now, there's been some really cool research on diet breaks, which are basically week-long to 2-week-long extended increases in calories back to maintenance, where it shows that more body fat is lost and more muscle is kept over time. Now, as a competitor myself and as somebody who diets down and gets shredded, every couple of years to do competitions, here's what I notice. When I restrict carbohydrates for a few days, I start to notice a deflating look in my muscles. I start to notice my performance wanes. And the leaner I get, the more pronounced that becomes. However, when we add in some carbohydrates, well, lo and behold, we will actually see our muscle bellies fill back out. Our performance will actually improve. And this is why I think having carbohydrates during a fat loss phase is so important, because we don't want to have our performance negatively impacted for long periods of time in the gym. These long periods of time of detraining or training with less weight can actually result in a loss of lean body mass that we've worked so hard to build. So the next question is, if carbohydrates aren't bad, why are they so demonized? And I think a lot of it comes down to the sources of carbohydrates. You see, most times we aren't promoting whole grains, vegetables, and fruits. When we see carbohydrates, we see things like donuts and pancakes and cereal and things that are so easy to over-ingest, but they're also not just carbohydrates. In fact, the composition of most of the foods that people consider high carb actually have just as much fat. And so you're not just getting a higher carbohydrate diet, you're getting a higher carb and a higher fat diet. The important thing here is that you're actually paying attention to your fat intake. The study by Hall also postulated that the group that had the higher carbohydrate intake and lower fat intake actually noticed a decrease in ghrelin, which was the hunger signaling hormone. So they actually had a little bit less hunger. Insulin is also another hormone that helps us feel satiety. So while we try to avoid satiety, we might actually be triggering more hunger down the road. So overall, what is the best approach? This is the most important aspect. And it comes down to what works best for you within the guidelines of what the best approach is as far as protein, as far as fats. You need to pay attention to things like foods that you enjoy and things that you can actually eat and not overeat. Things that you can include in your diet that improve satiety, improve performance, but don't put you at a risk for overeating, over-consuming, okay? I'm not a proponent for someone eating junk food if they're going to eat that junk food and just crave more of it. When we're in a caloric restriction or we're tracking our diet or we're paying attention to our body composition, it is certainly going to be important that you look at food sources that you can enjoy, eat consistently, and still fit some treats in that are going to work for your goals. It's all about the budget you set for yourself with your diet, okay? People have lost weight on McDonald's diets. People have lost weight on croissant diets. People have lost weight eating any food they want as long as they're in a caloric deficit. However, just because they're in a caloric deficit and losing weight doesn't mean they're setting themselves up for long-term benefits and performance. And as long as you're watching this video, I know that your goal is to have the most muscle and the best body composition you can do and make it sustainable for the long term. So I'm going to highly suggest that you include carbohydrates. I'm going to suggest that you set your protein around 1 gram per pound of your goal weight. I'm going to suggest you set your fats at no lower than 20% of your daily total intake. And how do you figure out what your caloric deficit is? I'm going to link a video below to give you exact instructions on how to do that. You can also click the link on prophysique.com and just get a free calorie calculator added in there. The rest of your calories, once you figured out your protein and fat, should come from carbohydrates with, as needed, regular refeeds and diet breaks. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys are having an awesome Monday. I'll talk to you tomorrow.